meet the candidates tonight and have stayed for the budget hearing. We'll go from budget hearing right into the board meeting. This presentation has been done already for the board. This is a simpler, kind of shorter version of that, as the board has adopted a budget. So starting off, as we always do, we have our district goals and our mission statement. Our goals have been consistent now since my 8th year. Goals 1 and 2 have stayed the same regarding being college and career ready and productively engaging in our school community. Goal 3 regarding digital fluency, somewhat new. Now that was data, as you know, but we feel like we institutionalized that, so we moved beyond having it as a goal and have focused now on the digital fluency piece. Our guiding principles also have been the same during my time here. They should look very familiar. Excuse me, it was the last 2. Where reasonable, we will make reductions, and where reasonable, we will use fund balance and reserves that we added last year to our presentation. At one point, as you may recall, for those who've seen this, they were in red. We made them in blue because they are now kind of what we do. As we entered this budget season, we wanted to keep those 2 things very much at the forefront of what we may have to do to develop a balanced budget. Looking at the financial information, we're going to break it down into 3 areas: the expenses, the revenues, and then fund balance and reserves. Hopping right into the expenses, we talked at this point about some of the main drivers in our district, as they are for all districts. This year, the contribution rate for TRS, which is the Teachers Retirement System, and ERS, which is the Employees Retirement System, were relatively modest in terms of the increases. We've had years where those have been much higher, and we've been fortunate enough where there's been some years where those have gone down. You can see the ERS one is the big one with an increase of $145,000. Again, proportionally and historically, that is not a tremendous number. So kind of if you're doing a plus and minus column, we'd actually probably put this more in the plus column, even though it's an increase, because it was a relatively small increase. This is not a relatively small increase and is the single biggest individual variable to our budget this year on the negative side. So if you look through, it's our 2 insurance plans that we offer, Highmark and CDPHP, and our prescription drugs. The budgetary impact at the bottom is really the concern. An increase of $1.2 million. So a very significant increase for us. This is obviously not just Naval Park thing, but it's happening across school districts in the region and really across, I think, a larger industry sector. As we've talked about with the board, the district is part of a consortium. There's 22 school districts in it. CASHIC is the name of it, where we try to pool and leverage our buying power. So we are doing things to address it. That's been in place for a significant amount of time. Very thankful that our main labor units, CSEA and NICET, have come to the table along with management to develop an MOA to try and limit some of the costs involving specialty drugs. So you're seeing more, I think, of an emphasis on this across the board from all sides to try and do what we can to control these costs as best we can, because every district is facing these huge increases and the impact that obviously has on developing a budget and program and staff. Our budget over expenditure slide that we always show, really the focus here is in that top right corner. About 77% of our budget is in salaries and benefits. That is appropriate. The average industry probably at 75-80 range. Education, as everyone here knows, is not about producing a product, but it's about students. So it's a very labor-intensive, people-intensive business, which is why that number is so high across the sector. So we're right about where we should be, that 77% number. Nothing too surprising or concerning there. As we switch over to the revenue side, the board is once again elected to go out at the tax cap. We've been at the tax cap limit this year, as well as every year since the tax cap law came into effect, except for 1 year we did go slightly under. That revenue increase is about $871,000 and will be the number that we go out to our residents with. A lot of talk over the years regarding foundation aid. A quick history lesson: campaigns for fiscal equity came up with a formula a long time ago that you had to fund schools by. We were always in the back of the room kind of with the hold harmless sign that said, hey, if you fund education, make sure your whole district's harmless, because we were, in the eyes of that formula, quote unquote, overfunded. Always a concern. Last year, the state decided to fully fund education per that formula. There was a lot of winners. We were not one of them, as we know. We had neighboring districts getting double-digit, 20% almost increases. We did not. We were at 0. This year, due to the legislation that was passed, they made an attempt to update the formula and some of the key factors in it. As part of that, we moved up into the on-formula category, which was good for us. That almost 6% increase in foundation aid is significant, especially for us. It is not historically where we've been. We've now seen our neighboring districts on the lower side at that 0, 1, 2, 3 numbers in the whole harmless category and fighting for more. So we have done well this year, being on formula. You can see the considerable amount of money that foundation aid is in terms of the revenue that we generate, in terms of the dollar amount, almost 19 million, and the percentage nearing 30%. From a state aid point of view, you can look at the 24-25 versus the 25-26 budgeted aid. Really, the key number there is the foundation aid. We always show this to boards. Those are different aid categories and buckets. The building aid and reimbursable aids are expense-based, so we don't focus on those. It's based on what you spend. So you spend a certain amount one year, you get aided on it the next year. You spend, you get aided. So those numbers are always kind of in flux and not the key drivers. So in this slide, you're really looking at that top right corner again with the amount in foundation aid. Excuse me. One thing we wanted to make sure we highlighted, the district decided a few years ago, many years ago now, to not charge community groups. We are maintaining that policy. We feel like they are taxpayers, they are residents, so they're already bought, paid for, and maintain the buildings and the fields, so we do not charge for that. One thing we are adding this year is we are going to charge for weekend usage when the custodian is needed to be present that otherwise wouldn't be. For example, if a youth group is using the gyms at Algonquin for the day, we wouldn't have a custodian there necessarily. We've just kind of eaten that as part of our kind of our community responsibility. We're now going to pass that on to community groups. So they have to pay for just the custodian, not the facility fee, but the custodian at the hourly rate that kind of comes out as the average for our custodial group. So one revenue that we are looking to increase. Fund balance and reserves. A lot of talk last year about increasing the amount of fund balance. We always have some fund balance and reserves we use. In a perfect world, you kind of build it in the beginning. Hopefully you don't use it, and at the end replenish, and you're able to keep those numbers relatively stable as your savings account and your rainy day fund for issues. Last year, we talked to you about increasing that amount and going into something we call deficit budgeting, where we're spending more fund balance than we really were comfortable with. But the choice there was to either decimate program and not use it, or use it to support program in an increased manner. We talked at the budget presentation cycle, how fortunately we budgeted very successfully and had the money left over, so that money in that fund balance reserves we did not have to use, which was good. So we were looking to support the budget with the exact same level. So that is the same level as last year, but an increase from those previous years. But we believe that it is the right thing to do, again, in terms of program. Excuse me, again for the cough. If you look at this slide, it breaks it down for you where our revenue and fund balance factors into the overall total budget. You can see our property tax levy is over 50%, which means our residents, our community is paying for more than half of our school budget. State is now under 40%. We've talked about in the past, at one point, we have that graph that shows at one point the state was more than 50%. They were the main contributor of revenue. It is now the local resident, has been for years. And really the grayed out bars show you the percentage of our budget, 3.75, that we're looking to spend on, or looking at derive from fund balance and reserves. Again, wanting to kind of strike that balance, a little bit more art than science in terms of how much we spend. We don't want to spend too little and decimate program. You don't want to spend too much and become over-reliant. We feel like we're sort of in a little bit of a sweet spot. It's increased, but we're comfortable with where it is, and we're doing our best to keep it there. On the instructional side, as we've talked about, we do a rollover budget, really a modified rollover budget. We started doing that a few years ago as a starting point, and really what we do is take the current year's budget, roll over to the next year to see how much would the program cost to run it back again the next year, factoring contractual raises, factoring the foundation aid projections, those type of numbers. When we did that, we came in with a $1.6 million deficit. Again, significant. Our third year in a row where it's been over $1 million. So we said, okay, how do we try to balance that budget but identify the things that are important to us as a community. At the elementary level, we want to address student-teacher ratio. We'd heard about class sizes, something that we value and is important, but we knew we didn't have the money to spend on hiring teachers to just tackle that. But how do we improve that ratio? Second, AIS teachers, a huge issue for us. And there's a slide coming up where we have had a large number, not large, 9, went down to 6. We actually projected it to go down further. We wanted to maintain where we are now, which is 6. And then something that's been on our mind for a while is how do we improve that delivery model in special education? We've been looking to go to a co-teaching model. It's been talked about. We've had meetings about it. Is there an opportunity to do that now? At the middle school, we wanted to maintain the teaming structure. As we discussed, Algonquin's been a model of teaming over 50 years, and we want to keep that, but it's no secret that a junior high model would be more cost effective. So the goal at Algonquin was to keep the structure the same, make sure we're still staying with our team structure to support our students. And at the high school, it really comes down to one thing, which is electives, because we want pathways for our students, which you need teachers and electives to have programs and opportunities for our kids. Those are the objectives we sought to make happen while reducing the budget by $1.6 million. We feel like we did a really good job with that. One thing we were able to do is move to a co-taught model for the delivery instruction, a model that we believe is better for all students, both special education and general education, and then talk through the implementation of that for a variety of reasons, focusing on grades 2 through 5, not going earlier, not going older in the middle school yet, hoping to get there at some point, using all 3 buildings, not piloting it in one building, anything like that, and making sure we clearly noted that not every classroom is going to be co-taught, right? If a grade has 3 teachers, maybe there'll be a section of co-taught, maybe a section that's not, or if there's 2 sections, one would be co-taught, one would not be. So it's not every classroom. How do you factor it in? How do you make that happen? It's going to require the addition of 3 teachers. Where are we getting them from? We have a retirement at the middle school that we're able to move to the elementary school based on need. And we have 2 retiring classroom teachers, general ed, elementary teachers, that we're going to replace with special education teachers. That overall leads to an increase in the elementary FTE of 1. So elementary as a whole plus 1. We have a budgetary issue, so how are we paying for that? Well, we look to reduce our aides. That breaks down for you where we were. We came up with 9 aide reductions. Note in there that 2 hours of aid time for clerical tasks for library aides has been added back in. We're also reassigning 2 TAs, teaching assistants, from the middle school to the elementary school because we feel like that's where their strengths and their abilities are better used. And then we have 1 aide moving to a teaching assistant position. So the cost really savings comes from those aides. Why is that important? And this slide is the one where I said, if I could do that recycling, reduce, reuse, recycle graphic, I would do it here. The main part of this slide is we did not have the money, without going further into fund balance and reserves, to replace the 2 general ed teachers. That was not an option as a starting point. So how do you tackle all those things? It all kind of came together nicely. Co-teaching, first bullet, allowed the district to reduce the number of aides. So if you go to a co-teaching model, you can reduce the number of aides. Reducing aides was the cost savings. Okay, so now you have bullet 2, you have the savings by reducing aides. Now you have money to replace the gen ed teachers with special education teachers. So we're able to replace teachers that we otherwise would not be able to because of the savings from the aides. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, if you add special education teachers as opposed to general ed teachers, and we broke it down and looked at the numbers, and all the whole program could be built, that allowed us to implement co-teaching. If I was creative, bullet 3 would go back to bullet 1, and that cycle repeats itself as we did it. When we first started, it was like, hey, we could do this in this one case. And I was like, well, wait a minute, what about that? And then we kind of expanded naturally and organically to this model. Really important, again, establishing the first point that we could not just add general ed teachers. We were going to not replace them, but look to reduce their attrition to meet the budgetary constraints. All this flowed and worked in what we thought was a perfect storm in a positive direction. In terms of the class size, right, we currently have 7 classes with a student-teacher ratio of 25 or more, 25 to 1 or more. That is obviously the actual class size. That is 1 teacher, 25 kids. Next year, projected, we'll cut that number in more than half by having 3 classes, not by class size. We're not trying to say it's class size. It's a student-teacher ratio because some of those classes are going to have more than 1 adult in the room. So where they might have, for example, 28 kids, there'll be 2 teachers, so the ratio would be 14-1. So again, we thought we improved the model in the budgetary constraints that we have. In terms of the AIS, you can see where we've been as you start in 2020, 2021, going down, the numbers in red, because at some point we had really thought that was going to be 3 or even potentially worse, less than 3. We've been able to maintain that. We have a great system right now. Teachers are fantastic. The model is working. We have data that supports that. We wanted to make sure we invested in that and stayed with that level of investment. If you go back in time, that was money that was originally, or positions that were originally in our stimulus fund. And at one point we had to bring that over to the general fund, which was a lift and an expense, but it's something we believe strongly in maintaining. The middle school, bullet 3 is really the key there, able to maintain teaming. They did lose a teacher in special ed, needs-based, it was retirement, and then 2 TAs, as I mentioned earlier, going down to the elementary level. We're able to keep Algonquin in its team structure, which is where we desperately want to keep it. At the high school, we have a reduction of 2 FTE. 1 is through retirement, 1 is through resignation. The impact on scheduling, however, is not 2, it's 1. It's 1 FTE in the social studies department. We replaced physical education, replaced English, and technology with business. You're going to hear from curriculum renewal, like a curriculum renewal group tonight. The curriculum renewal process, which has been playing out in different departments, actually did this work. It was the technology group, and it was from there that we had the idea, they had the idea, as they knew retirement was coming, that, hey, perhaps that retirement could lead to the reintroduction of a business program, one that we've not had here since 2010, 2011. So with that retirement, we feel like we're able to still offer those science and engineering, technology type courses, but still add the business program, and we're excited about that opportunity for our students. In terms of the IT department, we reduced, actually it was post-budget last year, a spot that we never filled, and this year's budget we just totally took out, so a reduction in our technology department, so another cut there. Additions, we have a few. Athletics, as you know, last year we added girls wrestling. We already had girls who were wrestling. They were wrestling with the boys team, and we felt it was a matter of being fair and equitable and giving those students the right opportunity. Fastest growing sport in the state at the time. We added a varsity coach. That level of sport in our district typically has an assistant coach. We wanted to fully fund that by having an assistant coach for the girls going into next year. Unified bowling, we were able to creatively start that program last year with grant funds, Title IV. We're going to move that into the budget. It's relatively cost effective at $3,000. Excuse me again. And then we talked a lot about nursing. We have an obligation to assist Parker, which is a school in our district as the public school. We have to assist them with their nursing requirement. We have a great arrangement, great relationship with them, very supportive, very positive. That increase is going to be 0.4, which has a cost of about $47,000. There will be a small increase in benefit to the district, not tremendous, but a little bit, but it's really to benefit Parker and do our due diligence there and our obligation there. So how do we balance the budget? And I said we had that $1.6 million deficit. We broke it down in these categories that you see here and the dollar amounts that we assigned to each level to get that down to 0 at the end. Looking at it a little more closely, attrition about $350,000. That's 2 teachers and 2 aides who are retiring, who we are not replacing. Breakage, we had 10 teachers that retired that we replaced. You see the savings there, came in at a little more than $500,000, obviously real money. So those are 10 spots that we replaced, but replaced at a lower cost. Always important to remember that when a teacher retires, it's not full breakage because we still have the health insurance. So you're picking up an extra health insurance if you look at it that way, which decreases that breakage amount. So that's purely really salary. In reductions, it ends up being 6 aides total because we had some reassignment and some people moving from aide to teaching assistant. In the end, 6 aides is the actual reduction. Really important to note this morning, Kim gave us some really good news. When we had talked through this before, we had projected with those 9 aides that no one was going to lose their job. Wasn't definite, but we kind of know the people. Kim does a nice job of knowing who they are and kind of who came to us, when they came to us. Some we knew were kind of temporary, some were looking for other employment. In the end, it's important, I think, and a very positive note, 0 layoffs. So no aide is losing their job. Not only is no aide losing their job, no teachers losing their job, no district office, no administrators. So that balancing of the budget of the $1.6 million was done with 0 layoffs. no one would not be employed next year who otherwise would have been. Did some revenue adjustments of about $181,000, largely in interest income. We talked about how we have money and that the interest that we are getting is higher than we had projected, so we bumped up those numbers. Some of the building use fees, the tuition, some excess cost aid, all those kind of revenue adjustments, little line items. These are kind of the highlights of it. Carrie's constantly going through and tweaking all of those numbers and adjusting them for next year's budget based on real numbers from this year. There's your budget summary with the increase in expenditures and in the revenue. Overall, that 2.9, we'll call it $1 million budget increase, 4.34%, fairly significant, right? We've tried to keep that number lower, but that number is high. If you go back, we had a year when we brought the stimulus money in, it was a little bit higher too. We talked about how we bring the stimulus money into general fund. So a 4.34 budget to budget is certainly not low, but we feel it's responsible and necessary. Vehicle replacement proposition going out with about a $971,000 proposition, 6 of the big buses, the 65 passenger buses. Always important to know we get state aid, in this case 71% on our bus purchases. Broken down when you add the finance cost, take out the state aid, the total cost to our taxpayers, $318,000. Annually, about $63,500. So that's the yearly cost for those buses. We're very happy with our bus replacement plan. Folks have been on the board a little bit longer know that at one point we were not in that cycle, but we've been able to get back on that, and we want to desperately stay on that. A lot of discussion about the electric vehicle mandate. Where we kind of fell on that after a great amount of discussion is we are waiting for that fleet electrification study, which we've started, partially funded by NYSERDA, hoping to have the report by the end of May. It's been delayed, not on our end, but just the process has taken longer. So we are ideally going to get that soon. And once we do, come back to you with a plan, post-report about how to move forward on the mandate and where we want to go there. 3 open seats for the board candidates. You can see there, 2 of our incumbents, Samantha and Megan, and 2 new folks, Christopher and Allison. 3 spots, 3-year terms. And finally, a May 20 budget vote here at the auxiliary gym in the high school. That is the budget hearing presentation. Any questions? Excuse me, I apologize for the cough.
I just want to comment about how happy I am that we're not laying off any teachers or aides. No one's going to be losing their spot. That's really important. So I'm happy to hear that. I feel like we've been waiting on that NYSERDA report for what feels like an eternity. Have they given any indication on that it's actually going to arrive at any point?
Yeah, the updated date that they gave us is in May, so we're still shooting for it. We're in contact with them.
Should I not hold my breath?
No, I think it's, I know, I really think that's a good shot that we'll have it happen.
Fingers crossed. Thank you.
All right.
Great job.
Thank you. That concludes the hearing. Samantha, I'll turn it over to you for the board meeting. Hold on 1 second, I think Ray's going to stop the stream and start a new one.
Yes.